You're listening to the Multifamily Marketwatch for Washington State. Apartment owners who need to know, trust HFO. The leading source for multifamily industry news around the state, from Puget Sound to the Tri-Cities.
Welcome back to Multifamily Marketwatch. For this special edition, with me today is Alexis Eykel, Landlord Engagement Specialist with the Tacoma Housing Authority, and once again, Mark Melsness of Spinnaker Property Management. Welcome, you two. It's really nice to have you join me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Alexis, can you talk about the Tacoma Housing Authority a little bit? Maybe something about its history to start with?
Yeah, so to talk about Tacoma Housing Authority, I would have to talk about our moving to work status. I want to talk about our vision, mission, and explain what we do in the community.
Okay.
So there's multiple parts. So Tacoma Housing Authority was established in 1940. We develop and manage real estate and provide rental housing in partnership with thousands of private housing providers, also known as landlords. We are moving to work public housing authority, and our moving to work status helps us work creatively, efficiently, and flexibly to account to the needs and markets of Tacoma. And I think we got our moving to work status in about 2012, along with 39 other public housing authorities in the United States.
Okay.
And so,
do you get some kind of special benefits for that?
Yeah. So the money that HUD pays us for voucher programs can be used towards client services, and we can ask HUD to remain flexible to reduce cost, incentivize families with children that have our housing vouchers, increase housing choice, which gives our clients a little bit more access to rent houses and higher income neighborhoods, basically. Moving to work allows us to operate site-based and project-based subsidies as well. And so moving to work funds pay for positions like mine. So I'm the landlord engagement specialist, and my job is specifically to work with our landlord partners to help educate them about our different voucher programs, and also to help increase voucher participations with our landlords.
Right.
Yeah. So we also have a housing navigator position that works with our clients to locate housing, and we can invest in community programs like rapid rehousing, development projects, and property-based subsidies, which are fixed subsidies that are tied to a unit, versus we have voucher subsidies that clients can take with them to use in the private rental market,
right,
or we have property-based subsidies that are attached to a unit.
Okay.
Yeah, specifically.
Can I ask you, or do you have any idea how many units the Tacoma Housing Authority owns and manages directly? It seems like when I've been driving around town, I have seen a lot of them. So it's made me wonder how many there are.
Yeah. So we own about 1,586 units right now. And we are in the process of developing multiple projects right now as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And do you know how many units are under the control of private owners that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So about 2,500 private units, but between private and nonprofit housing providers, we subsidize housing for about 4,300 households.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I believe when I looked at your website, it said that the waiting list was closed right now. And do you know about how many people are on that?
Yeah, so we have about 600 people on the wait list right now.
All right. And are you still taking people, or is it closed off?
Yeah, it's closed now. And we're trying to issue vouchers to folks that are on the wait list right now, as much as possible. But as you guys know, the need is greater than what the resources are.
Okay. Mark, can you talk about the responsibilities and benefits to a private rental housing provider? Because I know you've participated in these voucher programs.
Yeah. It's another avenue to find qualified people to live in the homes that we manage. Mm-hmm. And what comes with that occupant in that program is also caseworkers, right? Oh. So they have somebody working with the family to help them, and not just to pay rent, but employment and education, transportation type of stuff. So they may be in the world of need, with the assistance program, and they come with the need for homes, like to live in a home, and the program backing them to be great contributing families in the community.
And how has the program worked for you?
The program works great. I mean, and nothing's perfect because especially when you're dealing with volume and number of different people and departments, there's breakdowns. And Tacoma Housing Authority has done a great job by restructuring a lot of their program to broaden the ability for the support team to more rapidly respond to the needs that's happening in a breakdown between the housing provider and the family living in the home to support the resolution of that concern.
And either one of you, in your experience, what happens if a tenant doesn't pay or can't pay rent? What?
So
This is where you get involved?
yeah, so most of our subsidies are income based. So if the client loses their income, they would report the change to Tacoma Housing Authority, and we can adjust our housing payment to the landlord.
Okay.
So they're made whole. So they don't lose out just because the client's income.
Right. And that's a great benefit also to the housing provider, where in the private world where they work and pay their bills, if they lose their job, no one's going to give them assistance.
Right.
If they're on assistance and they lose the income that they have, the assistance can adjust for that so that they get to stay in the home and have the housing provider paid.
Is there a time limit on that? I'm assuming that you start working with them to find other employment so that
Yeah. So yeah, just so I'm understanding.
Does this go on forever or what?
Oh, the subsidy?
Yeah. How, at what point do what does the person have to be evicted at some point if they're not paying, or I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So does the subsidy go on forever if they're not paying their rent? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So our clients have to follow the program guidelines, which mean they have to follow the lease agreement with the landlord. And so it's really important that the housing providers enforce their lease agreements. And when they do start serving notices to our clients, they need to notify us and send those to us so we can try to support that client. We have a client support and empowerment department that can maybe help them and figure out what's going on in their lives and how they can support them while they're clients with us. So
if they have a lease that runs for a year and after 6 months they lose their job, then you would help them through the end of the lease, and then the landlord might start giving them notices. And
so we are payment partners with the housing providers. So we make our housing assistance payment that we agreed to make with the housing provider, and the client will pay their portion that they have agreed to pay to the landlord as well. So we will make our housing assistance payment as long as, the landlord's following the housing assistance payment contract.
Right.
And they're notifying us of what's going on. So,
So Mark, generally you could say this works out.
Sure. Absolutely. And there's always breakdowns in anything. And what's at risk though, is that family losing the support, right? So they're having a level percentage of their income supported by the program, and then their other income is supported by employment. Right. And if they lose their employment for whatever reason, it's not that they just continue to pay the gap. They're coaching them to, get back out on the street and get into a job. But if that doesn't happen, they're not going to continue to pay the gap. Right. So then the housing provider would have to then take appropriate actions with whatever those actions are, with serving notices or starting an eviction process. We're sharing that information with the caseworker, and that could jeopardize the family's future program usage. Right. So it motivates them.
That's not everyone's desired outcome. Clearly, everyone and all of you are working to avoid that.
Yeah. And it's great that you said to avoid that, the loss of the family, or the family losing access to housing. But in reality, what the game we're playing is creating housing for the families that might not otherwise afford it. Right. So it's getting them, maybe out of the homeless danger or being homeless into housing, and then sustaining that. Right. And so we come from creating the housing and not trying to just sustain it.
Sure. How many projects does the Tacoma Housing Authority have going on right now? Do you have any idea?
So like development projects? Okay. Yeah. So right now we have one pretty big project on Hilltop called Housing Hilltop. And I believe that's about 231 units with 13,500 square feet of commercial space.
Okay.
And we hope to have that complete in late 2024. Okay. And then we have another piece of property in James Center North that we are working on as well. But our goal is to expand Tacoma Housing Authority's role in creating more affordable housing. So our goal is to help increase affordable housing options by 700 additional units over the next 5 years. And we do that in multiple different ways. Like we may develop property, we may project-based units with a developer. We partner with nonprofit partners and help them develop property and maybe do consultations for them to develop affordable housing. We have a lot of different projects going on in the community.
Yeah. And what else is happening with THA is they're acquiring properties. So their properties are already existing through private ownership who are willing to sell. And the Tacoma Housing Authority has a relationship with that owner and then works out a deal to buy it. And so right now they have 4 properties in the Tacoma area that are over 150 homes that we have the benefit to manage for Tacoma Housing Authority.
Okay. And so when they buy a property like that, they usually have this relationship where the landlord has been working with them, so they know the people, or do they sometimes buy properties where they've had no relationship in the past?
It's not much of a relationship at all. There may be some vouchers, people living there with a voucher. And that's just because the owner of the property originally just worked with the program. And the intention is for Tacoma Housing Authority is to continue to stabilize and provide affordable housing in Tacoma and buying assets and not raising the rents.
Right.
And keeping them low for affordable housing.
Yeah. Because right now, a lot of our voucher shoppers, we call them shoppers, when they're looking for homes and they've been issued housing subsidies, are not able to find housing because there's a lack of housing in general.
Yeah. So. The vacancy rates are pretty low here.
Yeah. And one of the things that I get to champion alongside with Tacoma Housing Authority is I have some influence in our industry from what I do and how I do it with an owner and also a management company to share the value with other owner operators, management companies, and developers that this program does work, even though you may have heard it not work. There's probably a reason why it didn't work that you're not aware of. So I get to testify, and then other people that have the same benefits that I do start to participate in the program, which then in turn creates more affordable housing and easeability through the program.
Okay, so you're rather an ambassador for this program.
That's a great title.
Talking about it.
I'm gonna steal that from you.
Affordable housing ambassador.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So I'm curious, when people get these vouchers, do they have to stay within the city limits or can they go outside?
Yeah, that is such a good question. So our boundary zone is 2.5 miles outside of the city of Tacoma.
Okay.
Some of our special programs voucher clients can lease up anywhere in Pierce County.
Okay. Okay. And that's the money that you got from the federal government?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Are there any restrictions on landlords from participating?
That's a interesting question that's hard to answer because the restriction is be a good housing provider.
Okay.
And some owner operators out there don't know what that means. They just do what they think is right because they don't have any knowledge or education in the industry. Good quality, clean homes is really what the Housing Authority, Tacoma Housing Authority requires. And at the beginning of the occupancy and at renewals, they do an inspection.
Okay.
So they have a team member that goes out to the home prior to the client moving in and make sure that they go down the checklist and everything's safe and in good quality, clean condition.
Okay. Are there any costs to participate?
No.
Do you charge me for this?
No.
Okay.
No, we
I hope
actually
not.
we pay housing providers to participate with us. So
Every once in a while I get some donuts. So
oh yes, donuts definitely.
How does a housing provider go about learning more about this program and how to participate?
If housing providers are interested in learning more, they can call me at 253-281-7674, or they can text me if that works best.
Do you want to share your email
Yes.
addresses?
Oh, it's AEYKEL@tacomahousing.org.
Okay. And is there anything else that the two of you want to talk about? Mark.
yeah. What we didn't get a chance to talk about is that Tacoma Housing Authority is designed fundamentally around providing good quality, clean, affordable housing in the city of Tacoma. And so that could sound and has historically been adversarial to the housing provider. And in the last few years, the shift in the leadership and the culture at Tacoma Housing Authority has actually created what they call the Housing Provider Advisory Board. Tacoma Housing Authority actually hosts in a room just like this with up to sometimes 20 housing providers that share their frustrations, their successes, their failures, and ideas with Alexis and her team members here at Tacoma Housing Authority. And then they take that back to the leadership and the team to make the changes like they have that works for us to want to do more with them.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about working at Tacoma Housing Authority is we listen to our housing providers' feedback and try to create a relationship that works not only for our clients, but for them as well, because we can't do this work without the housing providers. And so our landlord or housing provider advisory group is where some process improvement changes. We talk to landlords about, ideas that we have, and just they help us come up with new policies around our programs that might be more beneficial to them working with us.
Is that something that anyone can be on, or are they usually invited by you to do that?
Yeah, so our participants on the advisory board are THA housing providers that have been housing providers for over a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have a significant amount of experience working with you.
Yeah, we have small housing providers. We have mom and pop, maybe own a couple of properties. We have corporate landlords that have 7,000 to 10,000 units, are the lobbyists for Washington Multifamily Housing Association.
So you're looking at fine-tuning your program that's already existing.
Yeah.
And you're doing it with the people who have experience with that.
Yes, and we take their feedback very seriously. And the group has also pioneered some really cool relationships with other government entities. I think they helped a lot with the Pierce County late rent program that Pierce County Human Services managed during the pandemic. And they gave feedback to Pierce County Human Services, and it was a huge road to success in managing that program, I think, and getting those funds out there to landlord partners.
It also relationships with the City of Tacoma employees that are code enforcement and fair housing follow-ups with. So it really is a saturation throughout the industry on all areas. Now, not all of them get along and talk and agree.
Right.
I shouldn't say get along, but they don't all agree. At least they're talking. Where before there was no communication.
Yeah, it could have been perceived as adversarial, right? There's them and us, there's tenants, and then there's landlords kind of thing. And so we've really broken those barriers and brought folks together to talk about solutions, about how can we make this work together for everybody to keep everybody housed, because that is really important to landlords, is to actually house, their tenants. And so I think there's a misconception that they want to evict people and things like that. And so I am really grateful for our advisory group because they've really change the way we've done business here in Pierce County. I think with the tenants' rights groups, like the Housing Justice Project, Pierce County Human Services. So, yeah.
And what was so great, what you said, is that we sometimes lose sight of why we are where we are and why we do what we do. And it doesn't matter where in the industry you are, government, private, for assistance, or housing provider or a renter, everybody agrees that we want people to stay in housing.
Yeah.
And it's just, how do we get there is the big question.
And we get there together. Yep. That's for sure.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information. HFO is an affiliate of the Global Real Estate Advisor Network.